We are back live for more of Sinister Cyber Con. I hope very much you are enjoying yourself. I got to mention, man, all the individual artists that come to Sinister Creature Con. Normally, if you know their art page, please shout them out in the comments below. We would love to mention them. We have 3 very cool special effects artists that are doing demonstrations throughout the weekend for you guys as well. So stay tuned for that. But right now, I'm very excited to welcome to Sinister Cyber Con. He is a repeat guest on our podcast and director of what was one of the dopest horror movies I have seen in recent memory, Death House, Mr. Harrison Smith. Welcome, sir, to our cyber convention.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great. I think it's a terrific idea.
So how has a lockdown treated you? Given you any inspiration for a new movie down the road?
Yeah, nothing virus related. I'm actually set to go into production in June on a new horror film that I'll be dropping the press release for coming up this week, and pretty excited about it. It's a monster movie. I'm really excited about it.
Wow, right on. It's kind of cool, man, as we've gotten to know each other, as we talked and stuff. You have kind of like made your way through. It looks like. Do you mind putting speaker down a little bit?
Me?
I don't hear it now. All right, I don't know. But anyway, I've seen you kind of progress through subgenres of horror, which has been kind of cool. Like you have gotten to do multiple subgenres within horror, and you've gotten to do it with a really dope cast.
Yes. Yes.
And every one has been a lot of fun to watch. But with Death House, that thing, you literally are taking, I'm 36, so you are literally taking like a fantasy draft of my childhood, and you're throwing them into like this super dope, borderline like 13 Ghosts-esque looking prison.
Yeah, definitely.
That you've got like Barbara Crampton and designed, and then you've got freaking Kane Hodder trying to make his way from the top to the bottom of with like the crew. You've got Sid Haig, just because who doesn't love a little Sid Haig? And you get to watch him murder some people. And then we get to the 5 evils at the bottom, and who's kind of like the spokesperson? Freaking White Whale of podcast guests, freaking Bill Moseley. And they're in freaking Terminator suits. Like, it is an 80s horror fan's dream, man. How much fun was this thing to make?
It was a lot of fun to make, and you're saying all the right things, because that's exactly the tone and the feel that I wanted for this. When I was first approached about the project, I really wanted to push this in the way of, I wanted it to be the film that if you were sitting in the 80s, like it's 1988, and you're sitting watching HBO at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want this to be the movie that you go, oh shit, I got to finish this. You know, like I just saw this, I got to watch this. And it's very 80s, and it should be, because this is the decade where all these actors herald from. So it was a conscious effort to keep that 80s theme, the look of those suits, the feel, the tone, all of that combined together. I often described it as I wanted it to be an 80s roller coaster ride through the funhouse.
For sure. No, that is what it is. We have the experience of going from top to bottom itself is very 1980s horror in itself. Like, they're traversing through these tunnels, and you have various different groups of kind of prisoners, from like batshit crazy mean to cannibalistic, freaking nightmarish death machine looking thing. When you did this, did you always know you wanted it to be this kind of a scenario where these two questionable, like super soldier special agents are fighting their way down through all this stuff. That's pretty
Yes.
good. The design of it is dope. It'd be something that you would be the opposite as far as horror goes. A video game would have to copy you instead of somebody trying to copy a video game. Like
we definitely wanted a video game feel to this. Absolutely. I mean, this is great. I'm excited to hear this feedback because the answer is I always envisioned it this way. The original script by Gunnar was a very different script, and he knew that he had issues with that. The original script called for a group of documentary filmmakers to descend into the bowels of an abandoned asylum where the horror stars are basically crazies, and they're just picking off these documentary filmmakers one by one. And I said to Gunnar, I said, well, this is fine, but we've seen this kind of movie many, many times before. And he said, I know. He goes, that's why you're here. He goes, it needs a rewrite. Now, he did hand the project over to somebody else who did a second draft of it, but basically turned it into torture porn. And Gunnar was very, very upset about that, and gave rise to the internet rumor that Gunnar had abandoned Death House, which he did not. He just did not prefer that script. And when I flew home after meeting on Death House from LA, I read both scripts. I read Gunnar's, and then I read this revise. And I promptly dropped the revise into the garbage can in the concourse when I got off the plane, because I had no interest in making that kind of movie. It really was a movie. It was just torture porn. Right. And so we went back. Gunnar's main themes he wanted were the concepts of good and evil. He had a group in there known as the Four Horsemen, which eventually became the Five Evils. I added a woman to their troupe. And I really fashioned a lot of it to lend itself toward Escape from New York. That's what I wanted. I wanted a Carpenter-esque Escape from New York kind of vibe. And I think we definitely got that, which is why I hired Adrienne Barbeau to be the voice of the Death House computer.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head with Escape from New York, honestly, because you did a really nice mesh of like scenes with them, running down the hallway with that slow paced scene where it's a kind of like a drug out kill, but then you also have scenes where they're holding onto the elevator cable and they're shooting their way down to the bottom. And so it's like
that elevator drop scene is total bullshit, which I love. And what I love is man, you get audiences have changed, and you got some people that have written to me or they posted in their reviews. You get some 20-something reviewer that has no idea about this decade whatsoever and said, oh, their hands would have been ripped up going down those cables and it's totally impossible. I'm like, so we watch a movie with these weird creatures that nobody knows how they exist. Kane Hodder is resurrecting time and time again, but you're going to call bullshit on dropping down the elevator shaft. That's where you draw the scientific line.
Right. Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Not to mention that I love Robert Englund, but it's always great when they want to play, Freddy Krueger if you're going to slap an award. And I'm not saying people in the chat or anything, if you were going to slap one, it shouldn't be Robert Englund or it shouldn't be Nightmare on Elm Street. Great franchise. He's awesome. Yeah. Gotten to talk to him before.
Robert's very nice man.
But we got more in the bank than the Nightmare on Elm Street Robert Englund combination when you get into an argument with someone who won't watch horror films.
Right.
Or understand that the elevator thing was the trope on the elevator thing. Like,
absolutely.
You got to expand your mind a little bit. And
well, that's what my podcast is about. My cinema podcast is about that very thing, that to expect more of your entertainment, you really need to afford entertainment the respect that it deserves, to understand where things came from. All horror today owes a huge debt of thanks to everything that came before it, from Dr. Caligari, silent horror films, The Golem, all the way up through from the Universal monster heydays. If you don't know your basic horror, then a lot of this stuff is lost upon you.
Right. No, it's absolutely right. It's like comparing Bela Lugosi's to Christopher Lee's Dracula.
Right. Absolutely. Or to take all of that, for example, I did do a podcast on Fright Night and the remake of Fright Night. I believe it was a 2011 Fright Night remake, the one with Colin Farrell. And, you know, people would watch that and they go, well, I wouldn't see there was anything wrong with it. But there is nothing wrong with the remake of Fright Night. It's well made, it's well produced, it's well done. There are no issues there. The issue is that it isn't Fright Night. There's no reason to call it Fright Night. The entire theme of the passing of an era is gone, and it's in, you know, Peter Vincent is a Las Vegas Siegfried and Roy. What do you call it? Who's the mentalist that's always doing his
Chris Angel?
Chris Angel and people like that. That this has nothing to do with anything. The original 1985 Fright Night was Tom Holland's Valentine to an era that was quickly fading away even when I was a kid at that point. The old late night horror hosts were disappearing from the airwaves as HBO and VCRs were replacing that. So it was a very maudlin kind of vampire movie. It was actually in some respects a little sad and a little sentimental that this is an era that was disappearing. And Roddy McDowall summed that up best when Charlie approached him to say, my neighbor is a vampire, I want you to help me kill him. And he says, you know, unfortunately, your generation doesn't want vampires or vampire killers anymore. They want demented men and ski masks hacking up young virgins. So what he was saying is that, you know, the vampire movie and my job has been displaced by what's come in new. And so to remake Fright Night in 2011, it was just a vampire movie. It had nothing to do with Fright Night, the passing of an era, or anything like that. There was no need to call it that. That's how I felt. It's a serviceable vampire movie, but it has nothing to do with the original film. Evil Ed means nothing in that film at all.
Yeah, that's a thing that happens too much, is when they try to do that and it's not even a recognizable anything from what it's calling itself. That's
right.
Kind of unfortunate. And you know why they're doing it. They're putting the name on it with the hope that someone's going to produce it and they're going to be able to make the thing. Because if we call it Fright Night, 2017, more people figuratively are going to go want to see, oh damn, they're remaking Fright Night. Let's see if they mess it up.
And that is a cynical move, which is why I make my podcast Cinema, CYNEMA, because you look at the cynicism of product that is being made, and the number one impetus for that was Jaws: The Revenge, which not only do I argue that Jaws: The Revenge is the worst motion picture ever made, the reason why I support that, and I support it fully, is because Jaws: The Revenge is not a motion picture. It's not a movie. It is a tax write-off. It was a way for a group of people who were exiting Universal Studios to basically fleece the coffers, give themselves all a healthy payday and a vacation out of Hollywood during Christmas. And that was really it. There was no intention by the filmmakers of Jaws: The Revenge to make anything good. That is cinema. It's not like Jaws 3 is not cinema. Even though Jaws 3 is a lousy motion picture, I fully believe that Joe Alves set out with the best of intentions to make a good movie. Right. He just didn't have the capability to do so. There were a lot of other problems other than Alves. Alves was a great production designer, but probably did not belong in a director's chair, and he's never been in one since. Yeah. So by all accounts, he's a very nice man, excellent production designer. However, did not belong making that movie. And most of all, that movie did not belong being made in the first place. Jaws was never meant to be a franchise. Yeah. So Jaws 2, you can argue it's not as good as Jaws, but Jaws 2 is well made. Okay, it's extremely well made with high production value. Zanuck and Brown returned with every intention of making a quality motion picture, and they did. The crime of Jaws 2 is that it's not Jaws. That's the problem. And it is a film made by committee. A lot of cooks in the kitchen. You don't have the strong cast that the original had. Scheider is basically holding up the whole film. And you're running through what I now call the Jaws 2 syndrome of that movie, and that is, we all know there's a shark. We're waiting 90 minutes for Chief Brody to figure this out. So there's some inherent problems with Jaws 2, but I would not classify Jaws 2 as an inferior motion picture. 3 and 4 I would, because the production value on both films is in the toilet.
I will say it made me want to go to SeaWorld, though.
Sure. It's a nice commercial for SeaWorld.
With Death House, did you know that you guys were gonna get the ensemble? Was this kind of like something that just kind of happened? Because to be called the Expendables of the horror genre, which is something I've heard multiple times.
I never supported that.
As far as the story and the subtext and everything within the movie, I would say it is wrong. But when you're comparing the cast of the Expendables to the cast of Death House, as far as heavy hitter, you got all of them. Was it something that you guys were like, if we could get Tony Todd, he's choice number one. Okay, if we could get Kane Hodder, choice number one. If we could get Bill Moseley, choice number one. If we could get Barbara Crampton, choice number one. And then it was kind of like one said yes, one said yes, one said yes, one said yes, and you were like, oh my God, like we get to do it with everybody? Like how did that cast come together?
Well, the cast was mostly together by the time I came to the project. Gunner's agent, Michael Eisenstadt, had helped formulate all this together with Gunner. And Michael is the one who gets the credit with the Expendables thing of trying to assemble a movie with a number of horror icons. So a lot of that infrastructure was already in place by the time I came to the table. The issue was you had a number of letters of intent for the film, but the issue was that a lot of those letters, I mean, Death House had been gestating for like 5 years. Yeah. So things change over the years. And for example, Robert Englund, incredibly nice man, very generous. I know Robert. I've met him. I've had a drink with Robert. And Robert is a fan of the movie. But when the time came to get Robert in the film, Robert had 3 projects going on almost simultaneously. The man had a literal 24-hour window when the money moved. That's not Robert's problem. You know, he has bills to pay and a lifestyle to support. And so when the money moved and Robert was contacted, he really worked hard. We almost shot his scene in his backyard. Like we even made that effort, but he was flying, I believe it was to Scotland. I'm almost positive he was going to Scotland. And he was so accommodating. He's like, look, I want to make this work, but I'm only home for this to get somebody here. And by the time we figured out that it just wasn't going to go, and most of all, you just don't want a sloppy job just to go, right. Oh, look, there's Robert Englund. Right. So it was a pass. We finally decided that was mutual. It was like we couldn't accommodate. He couldn't accommodate. So why push that? But we did get, hey, keep me in mind for the next one. So we will.
Right on.
And Robert sat with me at a convention. We sat in a bar for a while, and he said, listen, man, he goes, I saw the film. I love it. I'm in. If there's ever another one, I'm in. But the internet crowd instantly starts being outraged and going, oh, Robert Englund thinks the project sucks. That's why he's not in it. No, that is not it at all. Know-it-alls. You get these people that read some kind of, bullshit from some third-rate magazine and they think it's gospel, and that's not what it is. So my answer to those people is stay in your lane. Okay, when you're making a movie, I won't interfere with yours. That's how I look at it. So, you know, to get the others all together, they were very happy to come on board. Of course, they wanted to make sure that the money was all in place, which it was. Rick Finkelstein of Entertainment Factory was the one who put the financing together. And it was all there and verifiable. And then the ones that signed their letters of intent and then they wanted to read the script, they came aboard. They approved the script. I rewrote Gunner's script into the form that you've seen now. I turned it into a prison, made it very much like Jurassic Park without the dinosaurs. That's how I did it. So the real monsters get out, and it's a fight to get out of the park, right? The ride breaks down. That's how it worked.
That scenario is pretty good as far as the ride breaking down. We have the security system breaking down, and now all the prison population is out, and that is kind of the obstacle for them to overcome. Was there a scene with the I guess the riot, the fight, whatever you want to call it, kind of in the mess hall area, where Kane comes out, then the other big dude comes out. Big dude rips Kane's guts out before, to kind of show he's the one in charge before Kane, is back fully resurrected.
Yeah, that was already the hell off.
Yeah, that scene was kind of like the first, not necessarily the first scene that I was like, oh, this is going to be dope. But that scene to me was like, and here we go. Because that was kind of like after they had fought all the cops, had killed all the cops, taken the population. Now you have Kane Hodder, like freaking kill highlight Kane Hodder. You could sit there and watch that guy snap people in half all day in the Jason Voorhees outfit. But now we have him traversing like the most badass scenario. He's working his way down this prison. How much fun was it to get to direct Kane Hodder and all the different freaking kill scenes? Maybe Kane's not even on the docket for that day, but to have some of these guys in some of the ways that you get to design to shoot for the practical effects and the gore effects and everything else, it's like a horror director's playground.
And that's pretty much what it was. It was a playground. The coolest thing about shooting with all of them is to listen to their stories. These are veterans. They're more than horror icons. These are people that have been in the industry a long time and watched it change. And one of the things I'm very, very happy about and fulfilled about in directing this film was when I got to work with Sid Haig. The number one thing I wanted was to pick Sid's brain on everything that he had seen coming up the ranks from his Corman days all the way through. And I remember sitting for our hour lunches and just saying to Sid, tell me everything. Just tell me. I want to know. I want to know how the industry has changed. You went from these low-budget Roger Corman films all the way up through to some big, big names, with Scheinberg producing, and tell me everything. And he did. And that's just the pleasure and the privilege to sit and listen. Kane is a remarkable storyteller as well. I loved listening to Kane tell stories, especially of the accident that incinerated him, how he fought back from that. And I could listen to Kane tell stories all day. I mean, he's just a gifted storyteller, a terrific voice on top of it. That was the real pleasure of this. More than just, I'm not starstruck by celebrities.
Yeah.
But what I am interested in is the knowledge that they've accumulated over the years and who they've worked with. And it's not always about, who was the jerk you worked with? I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear, you made this movie. It didn't come out either the way you wanted, or it did come out the way you wanted, but it didn't get the distribution you wanted. For example, I'm friends with Julie Carmen, who I wanted in Death House, but her schedule did not permit because of her terrific performance in Fright Night Part 2 as Regine. And I love when I get the chance to do just a private one-on-one talk with her on Twitter. We DM each other. I just love hearing about the entire debacle of distribution for Fright Night Part 2. And you learn a lot from that. That's what I'm always looking for. I'm looking to learn something from these people. I mean, Barbara Crampton the same way. And Barbara, who has, done many groundbreaking cutting edge films for a woman in this genre, in addition to, battling her own health scares and things like that. I mean, Barbara is just a class act and just a wonderful human being, and a very kind and generous one as well. So for me, that was the exciting part. It was more than just being on set and saying to Kane, okay, Kane, we're going to give the audience what they want. I want you to stand there and I want you to turn your body the way that Jason would turn his body to look at R.A. Mihailoff, because that's going to be the money shot there for the audience to go, that's Jason, and he did all those happily. But the movie Death House really is, and Bill Moseley and the lot have all said, Death House is Kane's movie. Like, his acting performance in that is solid.
For sure. No, he is definitely your first billing of that film. Like, he is the star of that movie. It's interesting to hear you talk about how gaining knowledge. I've kind of taken that direct, where we've been fortunate enough, Horrific Network, to be helping Sister Creature Con on the panel team, and so getting to meet our heroes over the years of now being on the panel team, I still get starstruck. Like, interviewing Kane Hodder, I was like, holy crap, it's Kane Hodder. But when you say that, I get what that feeling does kind of dissipate when you sit down in a green room with someone and you're talking to them, just kind of person to person. Hey, before we go out there, and by the way, thank you for this film or this performance, and you kind of open up with each other a little bit. And we're all people, and so we all can kind of connect on that level. And that being said, I think we all have knowledge that we can share to each other and learn a whole lot from one another. But we got to get past that awkwardness of actually being comfortable enough to take it from one another. But getting to kind of absorb that knowledge that you're talking about, some of the other ones, in gaining that knowledge as I was going through film school and asking these different directors from film franchises, what do you think about this movie, or yada yada, they always like to tell me some of the things that they wish they never did. And I've gotten like answers like, don't show your monster in a monster movie. Like, if your movie is good enough and you can scare them good enough without a giant monster, don't put it in for the sake of putting it in, because it's only going to be less scary than what they've already imagined. That's one of my favorite. And but there's all kinds of stuff, like, if you can make it look good and make it real, like do practical, especially in indie horror.
Oh, yeah.
Don't rely too much on CG. But do you have, and now if you guys have a question for Harrison, please post it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to ask it to him too. But my first one is, do you as a filmmaker have any advice on those kind of lines when you're directing a horror film, or to anyone who's trying to start out, like, for lack of a better term, like, don't show your monster? Like, do you have any kind of advice like that for people trying to break in?
Sure. I mean, again, a lot of that is predicated upon your budget. Yeah. So if you, for example, I had somebody send me an independent film for me to review, and the monster, they open up with a tight close-up on the monster, and that can be very bold. But the problem was their budget limitation was very clear, and quite frankly, the monster looked like something you could buy out of Spirit Halloween. So not your strongest shot. to open that film with. If you're going to open your movie with a monster, you better have a damn good looking monster.
Right.
And so you're already setting a very negative tone for that.
Mm-hmm.
However, Spielberg, of course, had issues with the shark in Jaws, and now it's legendary that became helpful to him, that they didn't show a lot of the shark. And it's very easy to argue that in Jaws 2, there was just way too much shark. We saw way too much of it.
Right.
However, if you look at The Host, the South Korean monster movie, the first time we see the monster is in broad daylight, in slow motion, running. They were showing off their monster, and it was damn good. So the rule is very fluid in showing your monster. If you feel confident in your monster and you feel in the first act you can show your monster, great. Because that, the hiding of the monster can also become an element of peekaboo. And peekaboo can mean we really don't have that good of a monster, so we're only going to give you a snippet here and a quick flash cut there. And that starts to make an audience feel cheated. So if you are making a monster movie and you're going to play peekaboo with your monster, I'm not advocating that either. So the first step is where, for example, in my last film, The Special, we had a limited budget. It is a creature feature kind of film. And so the question always comes down to is where are you going to spend your money? Do I go out and get a name? And if I get a name, will that help with sales or really won't it? And most of all, the money that goes into that name could have gone into the practical effects to give a really good monster effect at the end. I opted to go with the monster effects. And at the end, our monster is very clear, and it's a real payoff. And audiences who have seen it from the San Francisco screening to Berlin have all said the same thing. Incredible practical effects and a wonderful monster. We really deliver. We didn't play peekaboo. So it really comes down to the directorial choice. How much are you going to leave in the shadows? How much of your monster was really made well? And how much do you want to show it off?
One of those things, too, I would say that I've learned in film school is for showing your monster. The same thing kind of goes for like special effects, makeup, and stuff like that, which makes you appreciate the creation and the application in that game as well. And you guys, that scene in the vault, I guess, for lack of a better term of what to call it, where they are these like
creepypasta monsters.
Yeah, like where were you guys at on the creative side that we were like, okay, let's make them look like this? I mean, you nailed it with pasta monsters. Honestly, that's what they are.
Yeah. Well, they were actually inspired by a creepypasta on the so-called Soviet sleep deprivation experiments. And I thought the monsters had a very ghoulish, wraithic kind of look. However, I was always inspired what Ridley Scott said one time about the original Alien, the xenomorph in the first Alien film. And he said, we're going to make a monster that I don't want it to look like, I don't want people looking for the zipper going up the back of the monster outfit. Yeah. So they found, I believe it was Peter Hall, 7 foot tall, extremely skinny, and they molded the costume to his body, to his physique. I mean, he's basically naked with this costume fused around him. So at no point in the film are you thinking that's a guy in a rubber suit kind of thing. And I was always very impressed with that, even as a kid, reading those interviews with Ridley Scott. So with these monsters in Death House in the Vault, I asked the casting director to find me people, male and female, willing to be naked in these outfits, but who have what would appear, I don't know if they really did, but I wanted to, when I saw them, I wanted it to be that they might have an eating disorder, that they are extremely thin, that when the latex outfits go on them and suck to their skin, that there's just no way that that could be somebody in an outfit. And we pulled that off because I've gotten in several interviews, where did you get those creature puppets? And it's like, they're not puppets. Those are people in costumes. You're like, no way. There's no way that anybody's that scared. I'm like, they are people in outfits. There's no puppetry. The eyes and stuff were done by remote control through remote control headsets, panels, but they were human beings in outfits, and they did a spectacular job.
Yeah, how long did that application take? How long?
They were hours in makeup for that. Roy from Soda Effects, I think those actors were about 2.5, 3 hours being fitted because the skin was put on in a way that it fused together, and they use heat guns. They were sealed into there, so there's no seam, there's no zipper. Nothing like that, no snaps. I mean, it was just, they were shrink wrapped into that outfit. In fact, where we were shooting in the prison, it was so cold in the prison that we had to stop shooting every so often to put the actors into heat tents, warming tents, because they could have got hypothermia.
In one of our chats, Charlie said, "Were there any improvised scenes in Death House?" So, was there one particular scene that comes to mind? Yeah, he's already big smile on his face, so he's got a good one.
Yeah, I've got a number of them. I'm an actors director. I love what actors bring to the table. I mean, I've read where Hitchcock at one time said that actors are like cattle, and they're just to go to their marks and do their thing. I guess that's fine. If you're that type of director, or if you're a Kubrick where things must hit certain points and beats, I get it. But for me, I love what an actor can bring to the table. So in one scene, which really worked out well, Courtney Palm is supposed to be walking into this room in a virtual reality setting, and she sees Kane Hodder strapped in that giant monstrosity of a chair. And the scene just simply called for her to go over, his restraints lift off, and they just make eye contact. We've hinted very strongly that there was likely a sexual relationship between Kane and Courtney in the film. She went undercover, probably had sex with him to keep her cover, and obviously there was a bond. However, it was Courtney who took it upon herself in that scene. The cameras were rolling, and she just stepped forward and she leaned down to look into his face, which the script called for. And then she leaned forward and she passionately kissed him. She tongue kissed him right there. Kane went totally with it. I don't think Kane was probably opposed to having a beautiful girl shove her tongue down his throat. But she did this and did it so sensually and so passionately. It took everything I could to not applaud behind the monitor because it came out fantastic, totally unexpected, and I loved it. I couldn't have been happier. She was worried after I yelled cut, and I went, yeah. She was worried I was angry with her. I don't get angry on a set. So I had nothing but praise for taking that initiative and adding something that really improved that scene.
Right on. Is there a it's funny that you mentioned Ridley Scott, because the suits that your five evils are wearing at the end of the movie are something that is not far-fetched to think that one of the Space Marines could be wearing in a Ridley Scott movie. What was your inspiration for kind of how you decided that you were going to unveil them to our two heroes?
It's a terrific question, because we struggled with that back and forth. Gunnar and I talked many, many times about what should be the final look of the five evils. And really, a lot of people, I think, were expecting Cenobite type, looking creatures, gooey and drippy and eyes ripped out, and that's just a ripoff of Hellraiser. We didn't want that. The five evils, if you watch the film, which you've seen the film, there's a very strong possibility, what if the five evils aren't wrong? Are they necessarily truly evil? Bill Moseley makes a lot of really good points that could sway you away from the side of God, which is what Gunnar was going for. So we gave them no makeup in the way of transforming their faces or layering them under latex. We didn't want to do that. Bill Moseley's Giger, which is a nod to Alien for H.R. Giger, could easily be a college professor. He could be a businessman. He could be the guy living next door to you. Real evil is common. For example, the worst monsters in the Holocaust, movies like to depict the big hulking Nazi guards and all of that. The real evildoers were the accountants and the doctors and the pencil pushers and the educated that were behind the scenes that helped facilitate the entire disaster. They were the real monsters. And that's how the five evils are. So we gave them no makeup, and then those outfits were a direct nod to the kind of Baroque set design and style of the spacesuits in Alien. They're a kind of restraining suit that keeps them in their place for whatever reason, or do they allow themselves to be kept in place? The five evils likely could have just clicked their heels 3 times and left. We just don't know. They were waiting for the right moment.
Yeah, it was kind of a question. I mean, your speech that Moseley says, maybe it's just something about Bill Moseley, because when he's delivering his soliloquies in Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses, there's some dialogue that he delivers as he's doing some truly evil things that I'm like, well, I mean, this man is not all wrong, for as bad as that sounds to say, but Bill Moseley is he's got a convincing dialect that he delivers his lines with when he's making sense the most, at least to me.
I may be mistaken. Bill has never told me this, but I heard, and I may be wrong, but I think Bill is in Mensa. He is. I mean, he's without doubt. I mean, incredibly intelligent. My phone calls with him before shooting, there was so much that he wanted to bring to this character, and also he possesses just such a wonderful sense of humor. I mean, he's a very, very funny man.
Well, what are you looking for as far as what you got kind of in the works coming up next out of you? What can your fans look from you in the next year or so?
Sure. Well, number one, there is a sequel written to Death House.
Oh, okay.
And it even goes way over the top than what the original did, and we really expand on Tony Todd's character that both opens and closes the movie, the farmer. Yeah. He serves a major, major purpose. So I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for a green light. From what I understand, I have no access to the books, but from what I understand, Death House has done incredibly well. So it's made a lot of the distributors happy, and it's continuing its run on Netflix and seems to have gone on to become a very popular motion picture. It is also a polarizing picture. You get some who love it, some who absolutely hate it. Most of them who hate it really hope that it would be an Expendables of horror movie, which gets mistreated in the way that they really thought that Kane was going to be Jason and Tony Todd was going to be Candyman. No, it was never going to be that. That was my problem with this Expendables of horror thing. It sends out a wrong connotation. So I'm working on my new horror film, which is set to go. We're going to be hopefully lifting lockdown in early June here. So we're getting ready to shoot that. It's ready to go. In fact, a press release will be dropping, I believe, coming from Dread Central this week. And I'm very excited about this. It's a monster movie. It's going to be a great monster movie. We have some incredible special effects lined up from Soda Effects. And I think people are going to be really, really pleased with it. It's a very dark film and a wonderful dark social commentary on the youth of today. So it's going to be good.
So before we take off, where can everybody keep tabs on you? I always keep you on my list of people that I always want to say what's up to on Twitter. So I know you're very, you are on there and you're checking stuff out the most, I think, between all social medias. I find you on Twitter.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Harrison Smith 85, and that's where I mostly hang out. I don't really have any other social media. I've found that Instagram for me is silly. I'm not an actor. Nobody wants to see me in a bikini or anything like that. So no, I'm not really doing Instagram. I mean, what am I going to post? You know. But in addition to that, I mean, I've found with Twitter, there's a great instant communication and reaction with people, and you can do a lot more. I do a lot more on Twitter than just hawk my movies. I think if you've seen my timeline,
yeah, for sure.
You know, I do a lot of like social interaction, commenting on ridiculous headlines, which, you know, every day just confounds me. We got to Idiocracy a lot faster than I thought we would. So I still thought we had 20 years yet, but we're here.
No, we are here, for sure.
Yeah, we're here. This pandemic has definitely shown that. And yeah, I mean, you can see my IMDb, but most of my contact, you know, information or everything about me is on Twitter. You can see my demo reels. Yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Harrison, man, one more time before I say thank you, name your podcast as a podcaster to podcaster. The name of your podcast, what is it?
Sure, it's Cinema, Cynema. It can be found on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's all over the place. Even a bunch that people say, hey, I listened to it, and I'm like, oh, it's on there? Oh, okay. It seems to be doing extremely well, and it is not a movie review site. Again, it is about critical thinking, and it's about looking at how cynicism affects our entertainment and even beyond. So it's humorous at times, but most of all, it can be a hard look at what we're watching, why we're watching it, and also some tips for filmmakers as well too of what to avoid. One that got a great response was the title is called "Consider This Before Crowdfunding." Some things that I got a lot of feedback, people saying, my God, I would have never even thought of that. And it's like, well, you probably should be.
Yeah. But man, I thank you so much. The movie, if you want to check it out, that we spent most of today talking about is Death House. Like he mentioned, you can find it on Netflix. You can find it on, you know, streaming, rent it on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
Periodically, I see it pop up. I think Shudder had it at one point. I think that's what so who knows, it may always go back into their library, but it's very easy to find.
I hope so. I love Shudder.
Harrison, man, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I am very grateful, and thank you for everybody who tuned in and asking questions. I look forward to talking with you on Twitter. And most of all, I hope everybody watching this and listening are safe where you are, and your families and your loved ones are as well.
And